You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 136. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hi all, and welcome back to the podcast. I want to start this week by asking a question. Tell me, if you don't make a change to your drinking, will you live to regret it? Now they say that nothing changes if nothing changes, but that's not really true, is it? Things do change. And they get worse. The habit becomes more ingrained because habit is just recurring behavior. It's something we do on repeat. So what happens if you keep drinking the 4 glasses of wine each evening? What happens if you keep promising yourself you'll drink less but fail to get started? What happens if you keep getting behind at work because you're putting in an under par performance? And what happens if you don't muster the courage to break free of the habit? Or maybe just assume you'll never figure this out. Or maybe that you'll never learn to say no. What happens if you keep having the same argument with yourself over and over again? Or tell yourself there's no point trying as you'll only give in again, just like you always do and always will. So what happens if you keep doing nothing? I'll tell you what happens. The life you're meant to live will pass you by. Now, will you live to regret this? Only you know the answer to that one. Here's the good news though. You actually can regret-proof your life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about how to deal with regret, or rather how not to deal with it. And the first thing I want to think about regret is there any upside to it? Now you might think, of course not. Who wants to feel regret? But the way I think about emotions is, yes, we have some positive and other negative ones. There are ones we want to experience and those that we want to run a mile from. But those negative ones, they are sometimes helpful. They can act as a signpost, tell us something about what's going on for us. For instance, if we're feeling some kind of longing, and it's not really a nice longing, that still shows us we're looking for something. And then our job becomes, how can we find out what that is? But then there are other negative emotions which are indulgent, where there is no upside to feeling them. Overwhelm, for instance, is one of these. It really doesn't help us to tackle whatever's coming up to say, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Right? Saying that just makes us feel worse and less likely to take the steps to do something about it. I want to start with what I call the less useful side of regret. And it's something I see a lot in my work. It's where we're using regret to blame ourselves. If only I hadn't started drinking when I did. If only I hadn't gone along with the crowd. If only I hadn't started drinking so much in lockdown. Right? All the if onlys. This is you looking at your past and just wishing things were different. You're blaming yourself or other people or your employer or the government, but especially yourself for where you are now. And it's real woe is me energy. It's kind of like you're passively looking from the sidelines. This is a total waste of time. Why? Because it gets you into feeling that your life today is some kind of preordained route book because of what you did before, right? Because of the mistakes you made in your 20s when you thought it was a laugh to drink as much as you could, and now you're living with the consequences of that and there is no way out. You're thinking of all the time you missed with your kids because you were so keen to get them in bed and just wind down on the couch with a bottle of wine. And now you look back and think, what a terrible parent I must have been. And you're thinking how terrible it feels to think that you were the one who made those choices. And now it really feels terrible to look back. And it feels as though there is no option but just to suck it up, like it or lump it. And when you do this, often there's a whole mishmash of regrets which all get tangled up and you don't know where to start. This is not helpful. If that is where you find yourself, I encourage you strongly to just drop that, as it is not serving you. So Anna, you might be thinking, you promised a more positive way of looking at regret. How can it ever be useful? You might be thinking. Well, when you use regret to make your future better, that's where the magic happens. How do you do this? How does this show up? So if we look at something we wished we hadn't done, or maybe we look at something that we didn't do that we wished we had done, or maybe even something that we wished we just started sooner, right? And then we take that emotion to fuel our actions right now, to change our life right now. Then regret can be useful, right? When you see that even though you didn't do things differently before, you absolutely have that opportunity now. You have the opportunity to look back and see what happened and think, I wish I'd done this thing differently, but I know I can go and do that right now, today. And then you do. And those 3 words are the key here, that you take action. When you do this, regret can serve as a catalyst for us to start taking action now when we otherwise may not have done. Think how useful that is. Just think about that. It's powerful. Your regret is showing you a way that you may not have considered before. I can give you an example of this. I remember back in the day, I was drinking, being on a work call, and it was with the States. I was in Europe, and so it was in my evening, and it hadn't been planned. It wasn't a planned call, and I was just sort of called onto it, and I knew I'd had too much to drink, really. It wasn't even that much, but I should never have taken the call. I mean, you kind of know where I'm getting at there. You may be familiar with that. Well, I could hear myself talking, and it was kind of like I just wanted to tell myself to shut up. Just be quiet, Anna. Right? I really wasn't showing myself to the best of my ability. And so I felt regret about that for the longest time and worried, what impression did I give? I really regretted taking that call about how I might have shown up. It's not even that I did something terrible, but I just know it wasn't my finest hour. It didn't meet my bar for what I considered professional. Right? But now, with coaching, I can look back and think, look, I can use that realization to fuel what I do in the here and now. So in that case, it was the acceptance that there are going to be times when it's my downtime, my evening, when I am not going to work, when I'm going to allow myself the relaxation. And if that means have a drink, then so be it. But that does not mean I need to put myself in the position of getting on the phone and feeling awkward because I know I've had too much for the conversation, right? I can choose instead to say, this is my downtime. And by the way, this works even though I'm not really drinking at all these days. I can still, and I still do, give myself that break away from work. So my learning there was a stronger delineation between work and rest. And that came out as a result of the regret I felt about the past. In a similar vein, we can also use regret as energy, as fuel for our deepest desires. Maybe even the desires that you don't even know you have yet. I find this not only helps to have me and get me moving forward, but it also helps me to stay present in the moment and to recognize that truly every moment counts. You can use it to make decisions and take action now so you don't regret not doing the thing. How do you do this? You look ahead 10 years or 5 or even one day and think, what might I look back on with regret if I don't do this thing now? Like if I look ahead and think, well, I regret not reaching and helping so many people with my work if I don't go all in now. I mean, this is certainly one I have for my business. Because I'm telling you, and any business people out there will know this, starting and running your own business is not for the faint-hearted. It's really tough at times. But whenever I feel like I don't want to do something, if I don't want to do the Instagram reel, for instance, and by the way, I have just started doing Instagram reels. Yes, I'm late to the party there. And if you're not following me on Instagram, go to 90dayslater.co on Instagram and please do Follow me, you'll find some useful stuff on there. But anyhow, even though I could regret not starting that sooner, I'm doing it now. And I'm enjoying it. I'm still new. And sometimes the idea of doing it feels feels quite heavy. I don't use social media at all in my personal life. So it's been quite a learning curve for me. And there are times when I really don't feel like doing it. And when I feel all the resistance in me, then it's helpful to ask, will I regret not learning this now? Right? Will I regret not doing this perfectly now because of what it offers me in terms of reaching more people who will want my help? Right? And that social media is the most amazing way to meet and interact and help people in all corners of the world. And if I don't do this thing now, will I regret that in the future? Because future me is rocking and rolling with social media. Right? And there are new challenges to have, but that's okay. Similarly, back in the day of drinking, I remember looking ahead and thinking, do I still want to be dealing with this problem in a year or two's time? Right? This what feels like endless and just an endless low-level rumble of discontent with drinking too much white. Will I regret not dealing with this now? Right? So that it's not a problem in 2 years' time. And I knew with certainty that I would. So you could look at this today. And you could think, so I've got this drink plan and I've got all these cravings coming up at me, right? Will I regret tomorrow not giving this my best shot today? And you know if you're giving something your best shot, right? We all do. So thinking in this way, I found very helpful. It was helpful fuel for me, and it still is actually, right? Still is. So I encourage you to give that a go. Now, you may be nodding along and thinking, yes, you want to do this, but you're in a lot of regret right now. I mean, you're deep in it and it's a real drag on you, and kind of like, it just feels like you're in quicksand, and you may feel like you're punishing yourself for maybe all the time you've wasted, all the nights you didn't get a great night's sleep, all the broken promises, all the times you said you were going to do this, maybe all the episodes of my podcast you've listened to and not taken action on, right? Whatever it is, and you're finding that really difficult to let go of, if that is you, I want you to ask if thinking in that way is helping you at all. I want you to ask yourself whether this thrashing and whipping yourself is helping you to show up differently and take alternative decisions. I tend to find that the answer to that question is a big fat no. In fact, being deep in the sense of regret can only make us feel worse. And then guess what? We drink to numb that feeling away. So if that's you, here's a way to turn the tables on this regret and make it serve a purpose to you. This is a little homework segment of the podcast. You know how I like to give homework. And by the way, if you do this homework, or in fact any homework, feel free to send me what you come up with. I love hearing from my listeners. You can get me on anna@90dayslater.co. So in terms of what I want you to do here, let's take how you're feeling about all this regret you're experiencing and ask instead what you want to do starting now. And by looking ahead even a week or maybe even a day, if a week is too long, and ask what could you do today to not regret in the future. So if you feel yourself drowning in regret and you can't find a way out, here are some questions to journal on. I recommend you write out your answers longhand, but even just asking yourself the questions and seeing what your brain comes up with will be useful. So here are the questions. How could you think about your past in a way that does serve you? In a way where you don't blame yourself, but see it as providing guidance for what you don't want to do now, as evidence that that approach didn't work, and that's really helpful. How could you use this to move forward because you don't want to stay feeling and shaming and blaming and punishing yourself with regret now, because you already know how that story ends. And if you take a different path today, as you know that old one doesn't work, what could that mean for you? What is possible? What could you do if you're sure you want to get out of the cycle of drinking too much and you want to stop regretting all the missed opportunities? What could you do? And then listen to the answers you come up with, and then use that to fuel your action today. Something I'll offer is to remind yourself that you can get help and support so you aren't alone and you have someone to help you stay on the path and do this. In fact, you have someone, me, to give you the path for you to stay on. That is what I offer. Now, maybe you've been thinking of contacting me for a while, but you're scared. You're scared to do so. Maybe you're scared of the investment, scared of opening up about this, scared that maybe you're a special case and it won't work for you. Side note, you aren't, and it will work. So I want you to look forward 6 months and ask, what would you not be regretting if you just decided to work with me now? Here's what you won't be regretting. You won't be regretting discovering the root cause of the issues you're dealing with and why you're drinking. You won't be regretting learning how to cultivate the mindset you need to overcome this. You won't be regretting all the great tools you will have at your disposal. You won't be regretting having learned how to manage your cravings. You won't be regretting having implemented and actually taken action on the true strategies that actually solve the problem you're facing. Regret, my friend, is optional. So opt out of it right now. Go to 90dayslater.co and click on the book a call button. It's on the top menu bar on a desktop and on a drop-down menu on a phone. That will get you access to my calendar. Do that today. You will not regret it. And I will see you next week.